We explain the Western influence over Western Europe. The United States and a coalition of nations led the Western world in trying to establish a world run on the Enlightenment ideals of individual freedom, classic liberalism, and free market economics. The major goal of the Western powers was to counter a rising Soviet and communist threat by any means necessary, even if sometimes those means undermined the goals of self-determination and the freedom that they were fighting for. Post-war Europe was the first big battleground for testing the Western policies, and was expressed through the Truman Doctrine. President Truman said he would offer assistance, military or financial, to any and all nations threatened by communism. This is also known as containment. Dean Acheson, Secretary of State to Truman, believed that through financial aid, military buildup, and a policy of containment, eventually the West would learn to thrive and prosper, while the Soviets and their allies would overspend and overreach with limited funding. Their people would eventually demand the comfort and luxuries of the West, and according to him, they would collapse. Acheson was mocked in the 1940s, but by the end of the 1980s, his theory would prove to be true. In the 40 years between, the United States and its allies would commit treasure and blood while increasing their own security state in order to make Acheson's theory a reality. To meet the Truman Doctrine, the U.S. established the Marshall Plan to financially assist in rebuilding Europe and push for free elections. This money aided in fighting a communist takeover in Greece and Turkey. The Western Coalition also set up permanent military bases within the boundaries of Western Europe to contain and check communism. The U.S. maintained the World War II radio broadcast Voice of America as a way of crossing into Eastern Europe to seduce and assure the citizens with ideas of free elections, popular music, and consumer goods. The U.S. and the Soviets found a way of placing spies in the various embassies in Berlin and otherwise across Europe, sometimes digging tunnels, to listen to each other's plans. One of the most notorious spies was Kim Philby, a British agent, head of the anti-Soviet department. He was also a CIA liaison. It had been found out that he had been spying for the Soviets since the 1930s. The Western powers helped to establish West Germany and also West Berlin after successfully stopping the Soviet Berlin blockade with the Berlin airlifts, which were round-the-clock flight missions for 1 year where Allied planes dropped off food, water, medicine, and relief supplies into Berlin. The Soviets would back off, but encouraged the East Germans to build the wall in 1961. The wall itself became a symbol of the Cold War, hosting both President Kennedy and President Reagan's famous anti-communist speeches. The West would also form NATO as an alliance between Western Europe, Canada, and the United States. A major player in the West was French President Charles de Gaulle, who led the French Fourth and Fifth Republics, turning France into an industrial producer despite economic weaknesses. Western Europe would definitely move in the direction of Acheson's vision of economic success through EEC trade blocs, British-modeled modern welfare states, and German industrial efficiency.